Hey there. I hope you're enjoying 2024 so far. It is coming in hot. Wish it would cool down just a smidge. It's a little overwhelming right now. I managed to get like a bunch of stuff ready for Protospiel. I'm quite proud of myself because I basically had like 1 week, but why don't we get right into it? First, the biggest thing that I worked on was bread. I made a pretty significant overhaul to all the components. I decided to give everything like a little bit more of a map aesthetic. So it's like you're drawing pieces of a map and you're like laying out a map. If you're interested in the sort of aesthetic changes that I made, you could check out my bread video. I updated with the new cards. So yeah, there you go. You could check it out there. I am pretty pleased with how it is uh, going so far. Most of the testing at Protospiel was to see how the new graphic design stuff was going. I wanted to make sure it grokked, and so there was a lot of iterating that was done there to make sure that it was playing well, people were reading it. Um, Notably, because I'm using cards that are twice as big as before, now I'm using mini cards. There's enough room on the cards to have some reference text on them, which is helping a lot. Before there was concerns that people would like see the effect and think, okay, to do this I have to play it. But since then, the new system where you have to activate infrastructure instead of it being an action where the cards give bonuses, it makes it a lot easier for me to put language on it that's like, to use this you have to activate it. So then people have to be like, okay, well, what does that mean? And so now they know that there has to be something in their base to activate instead of an effect, but it still provides a reference. So as they're playing the game, they could be like, okay, so this is for building and this is for gathering and so on and so on. Um, I'm glad it's working out because similarly, so in the reverse, the reference card, I have a much less space to work with, but so far testing going well. I So one thing I really want to talk about is that I've been reading Playing Oppression lately, and I was having the uncomfortable realization that even though this is a game that's like very focused on like mutual aid and how effective that could be towards addressing these issues over a hierarchical structure of domination to control these systems instead, it's still about colonialism, right? Like you're still exploring like you're still exploring territory, you're still taking resources that are unclaimed. So like that's kind of an uncomfortable truth, even if it's like a game that's trying to promote a very different message from most colonialist games that are about domination and like building the biggest infrastructure. Like even though those things have been twisted a bit, like having the biggest engine is no longer like a clear like path to success. Like you're still doing the colonialism. I The thing is that for the thesis of the game, it's still pretty strong, and I like that it has parallels to these other games that are very colonialist, like uncritically. So I don't completely want to like change all that, make a new game. I had some extra cards in this new format, and Matthew Hawker gave me this idea of having like a really, really silly base, but it grew on me and I started thinking about it more and I'm interested in seeing two bases that are NPC bases. They're bases that are not for the players and not in the sense that they're too hard to play with. It's that they don't give the players the sort of agency they usually have. They're more artistic in that they try to force the players to think about how like what unnamed players in the game they are engaging with. Like when they're taking cards from the deck, they're actually taking cards from some unknown player that's just vibing and is fine and it has like is not in such desperate straits, or they are displacing a like some people or things or animals and forcing them into desperate circumstances. So and I also had some extra space in the new rulebook format, so I dedicated a page that's like calling out the player or actually more specifically calling out me, the designer. So it doesn't exactly absolve the game, but I'm hoping at least gets people thinking or maybe talking about it. So yeah, I'm speaking of rulebooks. I'm at a stage where I'm doing unguided testing for it. I submitted it to Cardboard SN, and we'll see how it all plays out. That's enough talking about bread. I want to talk about something else. Let's talk about conviction. Um, I know I wanted to have this published ready by February, but it doesn't look like that. I had a really rough unguided test that made me realize, like, even in the tests that went well, where people played it correctly, like, and even in the rough one, ultimately they got to the right way to play the game. People were still having a hard time, like, conceptualizing it. They're having trouble understanding it. Like, they're going through the motions, but they didn't completely get it, if that makes sense. I'm realizing that in my attempt to fit it within a tuck box, I kind of neglected to incorporate all the lessons I learned when I made the rulebook for persuasion. So I'm going to look at seeing if I could, like, take advantage of, because I think I might be able to squeeze in a poker size, like, 4-page folio, and I'm going to see if I could utilize that to give the rules a little bit more breathing room, and we'll have to see. But either way, there's still work to be done, and it's not exactly published ready, so I promise I'll get to it eventually. I did actually decide to change one rule in the game. Before, like, communication was, like, super, like, free and encouraged, but I decided to incorporate a new rule that I think I'm probably going to incorporate in more of my semi-cooperative games, where you can't discuss numbers. You could talk about anything but numbers. And the reason for this is that I noticed that in something I was noticing in a lot of playtests where the players decided, like, beforehand that they were going to play cooperatively, that they would get really into the nitty-gritty about the number of cards they had, like how many cards they needed from the other player of which suit and whatnot. And, like, that's kind of in the spirit, but it also feels very dissonant from, like, the themes of the game. Like, it's more about, like, an accounting thing and, like, collaboratively accounting and whatnot. So I want to disjoint that a bit by forcing players to not be able to talk about numbers. They'll have to lean more into ambiguous language, like, I need more of this, or I don't think I have enough of this. And it gives players a little bit more plausible deniability to use that maliciously. So I'm going to work on that too. Try that. See how that goes. Last thing that I brought to Protospiel was Butterfly. I don't want to get too into the weeds of it, because I'm thinking I'm probably going to have to overhaul it. I've been noticing that players are not really engaging with a lot of the, like, components of the game. They're kind of, like, engaging, like, very light touches, like actions like skipping their turn were considered very powerful. Just discarding a card or swapping a card randomly with a player. Like, instead of, like, the cool stuff, like altering the timeline, jumping around, like that kind of stuff. And people saw that stuff and they were like, I wish I engaged with that, but I didn't. And at first I chalked it up to the game being too complicated. I took a lot of actions to streamline it and simplify it. But I noticed that even as I simplified it and people understood the game, they were still doing these very light touches. And I think I'm realizing that the victory condition, like the way you win, is actually, like, a little too accessible. Like, people were seeing that, like, they were, like, 1 or 2 steps away from victory or already winning, and they just wanted to maintain that. So they were like, they had, like, this really complicated engine, and they didn't want to, like, break it. So they make, like, little ginger touches to make sure they're still winning and whatnot, instead of, like, really playing with the system. So I need to do something. I don't know what. My first, like, hit it with a hammer idea is that I'm going to uh, just double the cards in the game, make the timeline bigger, make people have more cards, so it's possible that they're further from, like, victory. Instead of, like, 1 step, maybe they're, like, 3 or 4. They might have to take more direct action drastic action to be winning. So we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah. So this month was also Nonepub, and I was feeling a bit inspired by the Game Jam prompt for that, which was breaking was the theme, and you had to have windows and candlelight, and it couldn't be a dexterity game. I've been looking into horror games a lot and games that break the fourth wall, sort of as research for Closer, trying to think about ways to approach that project. And so I've been feeling inspired to make a game where you're breaking like the fourth wall. So I made a game called Divine Right. The way it uses windows is that it's like a look through the window into the lives of these cards. It's a uncharacteristically narrative game for me. The candlelight is that you're supposed to play by a candlelight and the game's supposed to end when the candle goes out. So the premise of the game is that you take a deck of standard playing cards, separate the jacks, the queens, and the kings, and shuffle that as a noble deck. And all the other cards are the peasant cards. And you're supposed to draw cards from the noble deck and look up this table that I've made. It's a 4x13 table, so there's an entry for every single card. And so you draw a card from the noble deck, you look up its entry in the table, and you read its thoughts, and you execute actions based on what is going on. So a lot of times, cards are getting destroyed. The game asks you to tear up cards, and yeah, so there's a lot of writing that went into it. I want to breathe a bit of life into some of them, but I don't really want to get too into it in case you want to give it a try. I don't want to like spoil it. So if you want, that's on my itch.io, and it's optional donation as usual. And yeah, have at it. Give it a try. It's a single page front and uses standard deck of cards that you will have to destroy. Rules as written. Don't try cheat. Okay. All right. That's pretty much it. That's all I got on the docket. Next month, on February 23rd at 10 a.m. PST, that's when the Knife Bunny Game Jamboree is. So, be there, be square. There's already some entries into the bit library where people submit like game ideas and game bits for people to work with. I submitted my entire Page Against the Machine game and all the artwork I made for that. So if you want to make something with that, with my childish drawings, then feel free. And yeah, see you later. Bye-bye. I like this top. I think it's pretty cool. I don't know if you can notice, but I actually got my hair dyed. It's just slightly purple. I have to go see my dietitian. She's probably going to be mad at me. I promise I'm eating. I'm trying harder to be better about my diet. Because that's what led to all the problems I've had earlier last year. Yeah, I really gotta go. Okay.